what Scottie Scheffler did on the greens throughout the course of this tournament. Started off a little bit shaky. He was looking like the Scottie of old. He broke out the new Mallet Spider putter this weekend. Ross, I mean, this has been a common theme going on the PGA Tour. We've talked about it week in and week out. I was a little bit surprised that it took this long for Scottie to go to the change. I was begging him just to try something different because he was costing himself win after win after win. And it looked like it finally came to a fork in the road. He elects to go with a new putter this week, and he has the fourth single best round on the greens of his PGA Tour career on Sunday to cap things off in almost breathtaking fashion. A bogey-free 6 under 66 on what was supposed to be the hardest of the setups in the final round at Bay Hill. He made it look far too easy, and even Shane Lowry in his post-round interview, I don't know if you caught that, Ross, but he was like in awe. He couldn't even come up with words to describe what Scottie Scheffler just did to that golf course. He ends up running away with it. Wasn't even a race by the back nine because Scottie was playing so well. Your thoughts on Scottie Scheffler waking up the flat stick and getting it going on the greens, finally, for the first time in nearly a calendar year since his win last year at the Players?
Well, I mean, the first thought is, God, Rory's got to be kicking himself in the ass saying 3 weeks ago, I wonder if he should just go back to the spider mallet like he'd played before. Well, Rory, you got your wish, and he kicked the field's ass. So, and I mean, it all comes down to the stats, really. I think the one stat I saw was like in the final two rounds, he was like 16 for 16 from 9 feet or less.
Yeah, I want to say in the last 27 holes, he was flawless from inside 15 feet. And we've been wondering for a while now, what does it look like when Scottie putts? Oh, yeah, it is a terrifying thought because he'll make the hardest golf courses in the world look rather benign, and he'll have a runaway victory. And it seems like when Scottie does have these types of victories, it's usually in this fashion. He puts it all together, and no one else really stands a chance at that spot, or at that point. It's kind of just a race for who's going to finish in second.
Well, I mean, you and I were talking yesterday when it was happening that he was absolutely lights out on the green for the past round and a half. If he even puts at 50% from those distances in the upcoming tournaments, he's still going to be at the top of the board.
Right, exactly. He ended up gaining nearly 4 strokes in that final round alone. If he goes and gains one or even just like a half stroke, he's still probably winning that thing by 2 or 3 because his ball striking was that good along with it. His short game was marvelous. He didn't find himself in many treacherous positions or anything, but whenever he did, and even that plugged little lie that he had on the 18th, like one where he has a 5 shot lead on the last hole, he could easily, take a simple line, go away from the pin and go and put it to 30 feet, 2 putt. He's got his victory, avoid the water. No, he goes and, puts on the same shot that he would at any different point in the tournament. He's fearless. He has complete control in his game. And as someone who was backing Willie Z, it was a little bit frustrating to watch, but at the same point in time, you have to marvel in what Scottie Scheffler is able to do and the type of player he is when he has all 4 key areas of his game going at the same time, because there really isn't anything like it. No one else stands a chance, and it's the best thing we've seen in golf since Tiger Woods.
No, I mean it's undeniable. He like we talked about, he leads the tour in every single category except for putting. He's like dead last. Where the littlest improvement, if he goes to halfway up the field average, it's he's still finishing in the top 10 when he's dead last in putting. If he makes the simplest change and moves to field average, he's still going to win.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that spider mallet putter treats him these next couple of weeks, particularly this week as he defends his title at the Players' Championship. And as many of you have probably heard, no one has ever successfully defended their title at TPC Sawgrass, not even the great Tiger Woods. But before we move on and get to the Players' Championship and some of our other topics that we're going to get to here today, Ross, I mentioned earlier it was kind of a race for second with the way that Scottie Scheffler had it going on Sunday. It was a rather good race for second, though. I'll tell you what, a lot of big names up there. Shane Lowry, someone who you shouted out on the show this time last week, despite not having a very good record in his career at Bay Hill, kind of even surprised himself with the way that he played and still had a pretty solid Sunday. Wyndham Clark continues to just be a master of the signature events on difficult golf courses. He had himself a really good week. I mentioned I had a wager on Will Zalatoris, had a 4-shot lead at one point on Saturday, excuse me, before the back nine ended up getting the best of him. But Russell Henley was there, Hideki Matsuyama, Justin Thomas, Sam Burns. It was the type of weekend that the PGA Tour really needed this week, as we kind of talked about last week and have been talking about the last few times we've jumped on this show. What were your kind of thoughts on everyone else's performance? Because I think it goes hand in hand with showing how impressive Scheffler's final round was, because none of those guys could really make any ground on Sunday because the course was just playing so tough. Like, I think Wyndham shot even or one under, and most guys who ended up finishing behind Scheffler had the same score. So I think that double shows just how good Scottie was on Sunday, Ross.
Well, for me, I kind of just gave Scotty the dub on the first hole when he knocked the 9-footer down, when he hit it short of the pin, but just barely on the lip of the green. And they were talking about how hard that green was all day for people to get started. And he knocks down a 9-footer first hole for birdie when the majority of the field was actually giving a stroke to that hole to start the day. And when he knocked that one down, I was like, oh well, he's on it again. But what I really enjoyed this week was the battles that came for that mid-tier position, that 2 to 5th place. You'd watch a guy come out, they'd start like six or 7 under, they'd immediately struggle like the first 3 or 4 holes, and they'd give up strokes. They drop down to like 2 under, whatever. And then of course, with our immaculate golf coverage, a moment ago, Rory McIlroy has hit 6 consecutive birdies
Yeah.
to shoot back up the board, where it was just that theme all day to follow, because you kind of could see which way it was trending with Scotty as he started to open up the lead, and like Shane Lowry and Wyndham weren't really able to do anything to get marginally close to him. It was kind of a 3-4 shot lead at all times. That middle of the board, that 2 through 5 range, it was exciting to watch the guys drop down. Then someone all of a sudden makes a run on the back nine, comes back up. You had several guys in the morning groupings shoot way up the board because the course played simpler in the morning than the afternoon.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, overall, it was a more entertaining day to watch, aside from Scotty just kind of running away with it. But it's entertaining because you had someone like Scotty at the top of the board again.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of marvelous golf coverage, Will Zalatoris was like not being shown at all on Golf Channel on Sunday morning, even though he was in the final pairing with Wyndham Clark. And I know I'm not the only one who had a bet down on Willie Z that was not very appreciative of that. But I don't know how you're showing one guy in the second to last pairing, but you're not showing the other one, especially when they're only in twosomes. That made little to no sense to me. But yeah, it was a brutal test out there, and there were peaks and valleys, guys going up and down. I mean, we saw Tommy Fleetwood make a 10 on a par 5. We saw Jake Knapp make a 12. Like, a lot of guys were just blowing up, and that's the variance that Bay Hill provides. You can just blow up at any given time because so many ways to find trouble. The rough was so long by the weekend. There's obviously the water hazards everywhere, and the bunkers tend to allow for plugged lies. And we kind of discussed this before recording, Ross, but the PGA Tour, we talked about this, that it was desperate for this type of event and this type of winner this weekend in Scottie Scheffler. How did they make that happen? They let the golf course play difficult. That's usually what happens when the best players play on the most difficult courses. The best guys rise to the top. And for whatever reason, the PGA Tour has like been going against that all season long. They cupcaked the Cognizant a little bit at PGA National. They let Bay Hill be what it was, and it was fantastic. And I thought provided fantastic TV and obviously provided a fantastic champion. So I don't know what the PGA Tour, just like anything that they do, it's counterintuitive. It's one direction with one thing, another direction with the other, and they can never seemingly figure it out.
Yeah, I would like to think that maybe the PGA Tour, someone in charge of course layout, everything, saw our little rant last week, where really simple, you have 80 of the best freaking players in the world are here, and 4 people can hit this shot. Well, let me fucking see which 4 can do it.
Exactly. We want to, us golf fans want to see the best players in the world challenged. And if you challenge them, you'll usually get one of the best players in the world coming through because that's the way it works, obviously. So, would definitely like to see more courses set up difficult like it was at Bay Hill. I know the players always provides a challenge year in and year out. I'm hoping they're going to make the Valspar difficult to wrap up the Florida Swing next week as well. But before we move on from Bay Hill, Ross, a couple of other things that I wanted to get to. Wyndham Clark kind of becoming maybe a little bit of a golf villain here this weekend, potentially, with what went down with his lie on Saturday. Some back and forth debate as to whether or not that golf ball moved when it was in the rough off of the fairway on the 18th and placed a club behind it like the old Patrick Reed special, and sure appear that the golf ball moved but ended up not getting called for a penalty. The PGA Tour reviewed it and said they weren't going to give him a two-stroke assessment. But not only did that happen, he also made some rather curious one-sided comments about the direction the PGA Tour should move moving forward, and saying that it should be more exclusive and that there should be more events with these guys, a limited type of field, 70-man field, or maybe even smaller. And Rory McIlroy, kind of weirdly enough, he's just turned into a kind of guy that just says things in different directions. I feel like he's been under the hot light for so long. He's just kind of up there saying things at this point in time. But he also kind of sided with Wyndham Clark on this matter. I personally didn't like what I was hearing whatsoever. And I know especially the guys who aren't in those signature events didn't agree with it at all. What were kind of your thoughts on Wyndham and Rory's comments this weekend?
Um, to be honest, it kind of pissed me off for it was really interesting to me having this come from Rory. But I also, I guess I can kind of understand it where he's been the scapegoat for them for so long, and this fight against Liv and Piff and everything, been that poster boy, Live bad, PGA good. And then they just kind of hang him out to dry, and he resigns from all his stuff and anything he has to do with the player board and being on the top of the tour. Where I think at this point, he's had so many people in his ear and heard so many sides of it that he is just kind of coming to like, yeah, a smaller field and making more money doesn't sound terrible to me anymore. It's just kind of shocking to hear from someone that led the charge for so long to him being like, yeah, of course I'd like to probably play some more select events with less people and come home with more money. The thing that pissed me off though was like Wyndham jumping into it. Wyndham, buddy, you've won 3 events on tour. Granted, one's a major, the other two were huge signature events. Go back 3 years. The cutoff they're talking about, 100 players having a card and being able to compete on this. Go back 3 years ago, Wyndham. You're 43 places out of even being next available to get a card.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue that I had with it too, was that it was rather hypocritical of Wyndham, who literally has had his assertion into golf fame or superstardom or whatever you want to make it, following his U.S. Open win and 2 wins at signature events. He was one of those guys that was grinding it out for 3 years. It's not like he was a college stud that walked right onto this tour like Victor Hovland or Colin Morikawa and found success right away. No, it was a bit of a struggle for him right out of the gate. And that's been documented all throughout Full Swing as well. And like just what he had to get through to get to this point. And it's like, did you just forget what you had to go through to get this opportunity to prove that you are this type of player? And if we do what you want to say, someone like you 3 years ago isn't still going to get that opportunity. So yeah, I thought it was a little rather hypocritical of Wyndham. And as far as Rory goes, like he actually said on Full Swing as well, I think he's just kind of gotten to the point where it's like it's hard for him to give a shit anymore. It's just kind of like do what you want to do at this point in time. Like he's always going to get asked these questions week in and week out because he has that legacy around him and he is the spokesperson of the PGA Tour. But yeah, just weird comments from those types of guys, and where the direction and the place golf is going right now. I would have thought that those two would have wanted the exact opposite, in particular Wyndham Clark, knowing that everything that he's gone through to get here.